Mr. Adiemi, we need to speak somewhere private. Mr. Adiemi, we need to speak somewhere private.
Speak here. Whatever it is, speak here. My daughter is in that room. Sir, your blood cannot be a match for hers, not because of type. Biologically, sir, you are not her father.
That is not possible. I held her the day she was born.
Sir, the results have been run twice. There is no error.
26 years. I have given this child my blood twice before.
Then whatever runs through her veins, sir, it did not come from your body.
Daddy, why is everyone so quiet?
Rest, my daughter. Just rest.
You are shaking. Daddy, what is wrong?
The blood bag hung red and heavy above Sandra's bed, and Kenneth Adiemi stood frozen at the foot of it, watching a machine beep out the rhythm of her daughter's failing heart. 3 hours earlier, she had collapsed at her own bridal shower, laughing one moment, clutching her chest the next, and now the finest hospital in Port Harcourt was fighting to keep her alive, while her father paced the corridor outside like a man waiting for his own execution. He had given blood twice in his life for Sandra. Once when she broke her arm falling from the mango tree behind their house in Rumuola, and once when she nearly lost too much, doing her appendix surgery at 16. Both times, his blood had saved her. Both times the doctors had smiled and said what a rare and beautiful thing it was, a father whose blood ran so perfectly inside his child. This time, the smile did not come. Dr. Ejerika stood over the lab results with his glasses pushed low on his nose, reading them again, as if the numbers might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Mr. Adiemi, we need to speak somewhere private, the doctor said carefully. Speak here, Kenneth said. Whatever it is, speak here. My daughter is in that room. The doctor exhaled, and for a long moment the machines beeping down the hallway were the only sound between them. Then he said the words that would end one version of Kenneth's life and begin another. Sir, your blood cannot be a match for hers, not because of type. Biologically, sir, you are not her father. The words did not land like thunder. They landed like silence, the kind that swallows a man whole before he even understands what has been taken from him. Kenneth did not shout. He did not deny it. He simply sat down on the plastic hospital chair as though his knees had been removed from beneath him. And for the first time in 26 years, he allowed himself to remember a night he had buried so deep, even he had almost forgotten it was real. For 2 days, Kenneth did not leave that corridor except to change his shirt. He sat through the night shift and the morning shift and the visiting hours in between, refusing every suggestion from the nurses that he go home and rest. Word had already begun to move through Port Harcourt's business circles. A man so prominent as Kenneth Adiemi, founder of one of the city's most respected logistics companies, sitting outside a hospital room like a common mourner, refusing every phone call from his office. His driver came twice with fresh clothes, and both times was sent away with the same instruction. Tell them the office can wait. My daughter cannot. He thought in those long hours about the day he first held her, 4 months old, small enough to fit along his forearm, crying so hard her tiny fist shook. Grace had been exhausted, still healing from a birth that had nearly taken her. And it was Kenneth who had walked the child through the night, singing the only lullaby he knew badly, again and again, until she finally slept against his chest. He remembered thinking in that moment that whatever paperwork existed or did not exist meant nothing next to the weight of a sleeping child who trusted him completely. He had never once revisited that thought until the doctor's words forced him to. Sandra awoke 2 days later to find her father sitting exactly where he had been the night she collapsed, unshaven, unmoved, holding her hand like he was afraid letting go would make her disappear. She smiled at him weakly. "Daddy," she whispered, "you look terrible." He tried to smile back. He failed. It was her Auntie Comfort, her late mother Grace's older sister, who never liked how much Port Harcourt society adored Kenneth, never liked the man who wasn't even blood, built an empire while her own husband struggled, never liked that Sandra called him daddy with such uncomplicated devotion. She arrived at the hospital that evening in her Asoebi finest, straight from a function, and she did not even wait for privacy. "Sandra, my dear," Comfort said, sitting on the edge of the bed with theatrical tenderness. "Before you marry Victor and start a new family, you deserve to know whose blood is really running in your body, because it is not the blood of the man sitting beside you." Sandra turned slowly to her father. "Daddy, what is she saying?" Kenneth's throat closed. 26 years of silence rose in his chest like a wave he could no longer hold back. And for a moment, he almost let it drown him rather than speak. But he had never lied to her, not once, even about hard truths. And he would not begin now with the biggest one. "It's true," he quietly said. "I am not your biological father, but I have been your father every single day since you are 4 months old. And nothing that woman just said changes what I am to you." Sandra pulled her hand from him. The betrayal did not come from the blood. It came from the silence. 26 years of it, wrapped around her like a blanket she had trusted completely, only to discover it had been hiding something enormous the entire time. 26 years, she said, her voice breaking. "You let me build my whole life on a lie." "I let you build your whole life on love," Kenneth answered. "The lie was not mine to give you. It belonged to someone else. I only gave you what I could. Everything I had." Comfort, satisfied with the wreckage she had caused, rose to leave with a small triumphant smile. But Kenneth's voice stopped her at the door. "Comfort, sit down. If we are finally telling her the truth, then she deserves all of it, not just the part that makes you feel powerful." He turned back to her daughter, and for the first time, he told her everything. Grace, her mother, had been engaged to a young man in Enugu before Kenneth ever entered her life. A man named Emmanuel, who charmed the whole family and disappeared the moment Grace discovered she was pregnant, denying the child was his in front of her entire village, calling her a liar to protect his engagement to another woman. Grace had been thrown out of her own father's compound in disgrace, 4 months pregnant and alone, with nowhere to go and no one willing to defend her name. Kenneth had been a struggling clerk at a shipping company in Port Harcourt when a mutual friend introduced them, asking simply if he could help a good woman in trouble find somewhere safe to stay. He had taken one look at Grace, proud, frightened, refusing to cry in front of strangers, and something in him had refused to walk away. He married her 3 months later, not because duty demanded it, but because by then he could not imagine his life without her. When Sandra was born, he was the first person to hold her, the first man whose voice she ever heard, the one whose hands changed every diaper and whose shoulder she slept against every night of her infancy. He never once, not for a single day, treated her as anything less than his own. "Your mother wanted to tell you the truth when you turned 18, Kenneth said, his voice thick, but she got sick that year, and then she was gone, and I could never find the courage to be the one who took away the only father you had ever known, using my own mouth to do it. I told myself I was protecting you. Maybe I was only protecting myself." Sandra sat in silence for a long time, tears sliding down cheeks that had gone pale with shock. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled with something between grief and fury. "You should have told me, not Auntie Comfort, not in a hospital bed 3 days before my wedding. You." "You are right," Kenneth said, "and I will spend the rest of my life sorry for the way you learnt it. But I will never be sorry that I raised you. Never." She did not answer him again that night. She turned her face to the window and let him sit there, unwanted but unmoved, exactly where he had always chosen to be. The days that followed were the hardest of Kenneth's life. Sandra barely spoke to him. She moved out of his house into a small flat with her fiancé Victor's sister, needing distance to think, needing air that did not smell like a lie she had breathed her whole life without knowing it. Comfort, meanwhile, made sure the story reached every corner of the extended family before the wedding, delighting in every whispered conversation, every raised eyebrow at market, every relative who suddenly remembered how they had always found it strange that Sandra didn't really resemble the Adeyemi side. Victor's family, hearing the rumors, summoned an emergency meeting to discuss whether the wedding should proceed at all, as though Sandra's worth had suddenly changed because the truth about her birth had finally surfaced. Victor's mother, a woman who had always measured status by bloodline and family name, sat at the head of the table and said plainly that marrying into a family with confused paternity could embarrass them in society, that people would talk, that grandchildren deserved a clean lineage they could be proud of. It was Victor himself who silenced his own parents in that meeting, rising from his chair with a steadiness that surprised everyone in the room. He said he had watched Kenneth Adeyemi build a company from nothing, raise a daughter alone after losing his wife, and never once complain about the weight of either. He said a man's blood had nothing to do with the kind of father he chose to be, and that if his own family could not see the difference between a bloodline and a legacy, then perhaps he had been raised by people who did not understand what love actually required. He was not marrying a bloodline, he was marrying Sandra, and any family that measured her value by paternity was a family unworthy of her. His father, uncomfortable with the tension, quietly agreed that the wedding should proceed. His mother did not speak again for the rest of the meeting. But it was a letter that finally broke through Sandra's silence, a letter she found while clearing out an old box of her mother's belongings, written in Grace's own hand, dated the week Sandra was born. My daughter will never know a single day of shame because a man loved us both before he had any obligation to. He held her before he even knew if she would ever call him daddy. If she ever asks who her father is, tell her the man whose hands never once let her fall. Sandra read the letter 17 times before she stopped crying long enough to call him. She sat on the floor of Victor's sister's flat with the box of her mother's things scattered around her. Old photographs, a wedding ring Grace had never stopped wearing, even after Kenneth gave her a new one, a rosary, a stack of receipts from a hospital bill Kenneth had quietly paid the year Grace first fell ill. In every photograph, in every scrap of paper, she saw the same pattern repeating itself. A man who showed up again and again for a family that was never legally obliged to keep him. She thought about the nights he stayed up with her during exam seasons, quizzing her on subjects he barely understood himself so she would not study alone. She thought about the day he sold his own car to cover her university fees the year his business nearly collapsed, telling her cheerfully that he preferred the bus anyway. She thought about every birthday, every school play, every fever in the middle of the night, and understood finally that a father was not a fact printed on a laboratory report. A father was a decision made every single day that nobody had ever forced him to keep making. She found Kenneth in his study that night, still awake, still going through old photo albums of her childhood, as though searching them for some clue to who he really had been to her all along. She stood in the doorway for a long moment before she spoke. "Daddy," she said, and the word came out different this time, not out of habit, but out of choice. "I read Mommy's letter." He looked up and something in his face broke open. "I'm not angry that you are not my blood," she continued, her voice shaking. "I'm angry that you carried this alone for 26 years, thinking I would love you less if I knew the truth. I would never love you less. You are the only father I have ever had and the only one I will ever claim."
He crossed the room and held his daughter the way he had held her the day she was born, like something too precious to ever let go of again. The wedding took place 3 weeks later, delayed only long enough for Sandra to heal and to plan one final piece of the ceremony that no one, not even Victor, knew was coming. At the reception, in front of both families, in front of Comfort, seated proudly near the high table, still wearing the same triumphant smile she had worn at the hospital, Sandra took the microphone before the toasts began. "There is a tradition," she said, "where the bride is walked down the aisle by her biological father, and I want to honor that tradition today." A ripple of confusion moved through the room. Comfort sat up straighter, glancing toward the door as though expecting Emmanuel himself to walk in and claim a moment he had never earned. "So today," she continued, "I want everyone to know exactly who that man is." She turned, extended her hand toward the man standing quietly near the edge of the room, and called him forward. "Kenneth Adeyemi is my father. Not because of blood, because he chose me before I could speak, before I could walk, before I could ever think him. He held me when a man who shared my blood refused to. He fed me, clothed me, prayed over me, buried my mother beside me, and never once made me feel like anything less than his own daughter. Blood did not make me my father, love did. And I will spend today and every day after proud to carry his name. The room rose in applause, and Comfort's smile collapsed into something ugly and small, as every eye in the room turned toward her, remembering exactly who had tried to use this truth as a weapon in a hospital room instead of a moment of grace. Relatives who had whispered for weeks now would not meet her eyes. Her own husband, embarrassed by the spectacle she had caused, quietly excused himself from the table. Kenneth walked his daughter down the aisle that evening with tears he did not bother hiding, and when the officiant asked who gives this woman to be married, his voice did not shake once. "Her father does," he said, "all of me, every year of it." Comfort left the reception before the cake was cut, unable to sit through a celebration that had turned her cruelty into the very proof of Kenneth's greatness. In the months that followed, the family that had once hung on her every gossiping word slowly stopped inviting her into their conversations, having seen for themselves exactly what kind of woman could stand in a hospital room and choose to wound a grieving young bride rather than protect her. Even her own children, embarrassed by what her mother had done, quietly distanced themselves from the version of the story she tried to tell at family gatherings, until eventually she stopped attending them altogether. Sandra, for her part, never spoke of blood again. She spoke instead of a man who had never once needed a laboratory to prove what 26 years of devotion had already made true. Does love make a father? Or does blood? Tell us in the comments. Would you have forgiven the silence or not? If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs it today. And drop a comment. We want to hear from you. God bless you.